Hello, name's Henry, and tonight I'm going to be discussing a mystical place. I say mystical because back when I was a kid, used to go there after we was told about the place, but there was a warning from the kid I went to school with. His grandpa told us about it and said that had a lot of big catfish, and certain times of year you go down there, and it was a big underwater cave. But certain times of the year, you could he said that he would go down there as a kid and they would take horse and buggy and pull the horses and buggies down there inside that cave and they'd have picnics. Then he proceeded to tell us that we wasn't allowed there at dark, and if he ever heard of us going back there at nighttime, he would tan our hides and we would be barred from going back in there. He didn't really give us a reason, but we found out later that there was a reason. It's because for 7 years, for whatever reason, it's a 20-foot hole backed up against a wall in this creek called Wines Branch. And that sand goes from where the edge of the water was all the way up to the bluff. Well, after 7 years, for 2 years, the sand pulls back and there's a deep hole there. You go along that bluff and get in the water, there's a rock ledge that you walk on. And if you reach down under the water, you can feel the opening of that cave. Well, we found out you could swim and come up inside of it. And in the top of that cave, shining down where you would go in and come up out of the water, there was a big air pocket. And it was all sand in there. And you could see the light from outside coming through that big hole. Well, we'd been fishing all over the place and decided that we wanted to go check this place out. So one afternoon, we went and talked to this kid I went to school with, his grandpa, and he said, "Boys, let's go outside and talk." And he got kind of a whisper, don't want my wife to hear about this. So we go outside and we're standing around, and he come outside and he goes, "Boys, straight back behind the house, down there on Wines Branch." He said, "Now, how you get to this, it is straight back behind our house, but it's all fields. So," he said, "I prefer that you go back out of our driveway. And when you get to the end of the driveway, right there where the blacktop goes, turn, go down toward the rock quarry. Right before you cross the bridge, don't turn into the rock quarry, turn to your left. Follow that road along Rhines Branch." And he said, "Just drive slow, keep looking to your right. You can't miss it. You'll see I got a path cut. It's the only path that's cut down to Wines Branch." He said, "But I'm telling you, boys, do not be down there after dark. Do not sneak in there after dark. From my house, I can see a light back there. If I see a light, I'm coming back there with the dog and a gun." And he said, "I will skin y'all's hides." He said, "The reason I'm telling you can go back there is because that's where I met my wife. All the people in the neighborhood used to gather, and they'd go down that road back there in Wines Branch. There was a big, huge cave. You go off down like you was gonna go into the creek with horse and buggy, and it was nice and cool in there. Stayed about 50, 60 degrees year round. Said we'd pull the horse and buggies in there, and other people from the neighborhood come down there, and it was huge. Line them horse and buggies up, and that way the horses would stay cool. They wouldn't be out there in the hot sun while we was in there picnicking. And we'd take torches and lanterns, put in there, and light the whole place up. Beautiful place. He said, but here's the catch. He said, now this was like in 1920s, early 1920s. And he said, we'd been going there for a few years, and I met my wife there. She was a neighbor girl down the road. And he said, believe it or not, we even got married in there. He said, but during this 2 year period, it was dry with no water running there. And he said, my great grandpa owned this property. He's the one that showed me and told me about it. And we went picnicking back there. Well, a couple years passed, and it was on the third year. And this other boy in the neighborhood had been back there on picnics. Well, everybody knew that on the third year you didn't go there. You just didn't. Well, it was one hot summer night in July. The boy climbed out the window and decided that he was going to go down there and wait around in Wine's Branch and by that cave. Well, don't know what he done or what really happened to him, but sometime during the night, that sand started rolling back across, covered up that hole, and that water went all the way to the bluff. Well, next morning, his parents got up and started hollering for him. He didn't answer and didn't get up. So the dad said, well, while you're cooking breakfast, I'll go up there and roll him out of bed. Goes up there and you don't hear no snoring, no moving. He opens the bedroom door and boy wasn't there. So he goes outside and looks around, don't see nothing. So he tells the wife, keep doing breakfast and I'll go talk to the neighbor. Maybe they seen something. Well, you know how it is in the country. One person tells somebody, another person tells somebody, next thing you know, the whole neighborhood knows. So everybody's looking for this boy. The mom quit cooking and they went to searching. Well, it just so happens my friend's dad got the call. They come to his door and ask if they go back there. Sure, let me get my boots on and I'll hook the horses up and we'll go back there. Well, all these wagons and horses and people went back there to Wine's Branch, where this cave was. Well, they done knew it was on the third year, and that cave was going to be sealed shut with sand. So they got back there. There they found the boy's shoes. They found his socks stuffed inside of his shoes. They found his pants. They found his shirt. Well, the boy was smart enough and lived around the country long enough that he knew to aim the toe of the shoe, toward the water, or what would have been the water had there been water. So there was just a skim, probably about 4 inches of gap there between the sand and the top of that cave. So the guys started digging. They got a spot big enough that they could shine a light in there, and one of them even shimmied down and got inside there while the others kept digging. There wasn't no trace of that boy nowhere. It was just like he vanished into thin air. So they proceeded to walk the hills and the hollers and along there by Wine's Branch and look for tracks. Nothing. Well, one guy went up on top of the bluff to look through what they called the chimney pipe, which was the big opening in the top. You couldn't go down in through the cave from the top unless you had a rope. But he stuck a lantern down in there and shined around, and nothing. It was just empty. Well, somebody had a rope, and they decided they'd lure some in there and see if maybe there's some tracks or something. Well, they tied the rope off to a great big old huge cottonwood tree, and dropped the rope down inside the hole, and one real thin guy, he shimmied down that rope. And another guy shimmied down the rope. These two guys are down there looking around, and they find these little tiny, little bitty tiny footprints. Then they started finding what looked like a young boy's bare footprints. And there was water still standing in the prints. The prints only went so far, the little tiny prints and the great big prints. And then they just stopped. Well, they looked and they hollered and nothing. Nothing other than the echo of their own voice inside that cave. And it was just a great big room. It was probably 100 foot by 300 foot room. Inside was like a big dome. Anyway, hello, Urso. They looked in there and couldn't find nothing. So two guys give up and they climb back up the rope. They asked them what they seen. They said, well, down there was a little bit of a muddy floor, and they seen some track, looked like a boy's track, barefoot track. Then they seen some little bitty tiny tracks. So they decided that the tracks just ended, both sets. So they said that's all we seen. We hollered and heard nothing but our echo. So every couple of years they go down there and holler, and then after the 7th year comes the 8th. The sand just overnight sometime pulled back. The cave was fully exposed, but it was underwater. So they said it must have been changing at nighttime. But it's just really odd, how it would fill itself in and pull itself back. It never made no sense. Well, come to us going back there. Now, this water hole was probably 50 foot long by maybe 15, 20 foot wide, from the shore up to the bluff wall. Well, we went back there, and of course we fished, and we was knocking the hell out of bullheads, great big old bullheads. Well, just all of a sudden, like any other place you fish, they just quit biting. They were done biting, I guess. So, well, we played around there for a while and decided that we was going to swim across to that bluff wall. Then from there, we was going to reach down and find that opening and swim in there, see what we could see. So we did. I went first, pulled myself under, and on the inside there was a big air pocket, and you had kind of a muddy, rocky floor in there. And you could see because the light was coming through the top. So next thing you know, here come my school friend. He popped head up inside there where I was at, and I reached down to grab his hand to kind of help him up a little bit. Then a few seconds later, here come his brother. It was cold in there. We just come underneath the water. All you did was just kind of went down and backed up. Jesus Christ, it's cold in there. I started getting goosebumps on top of goosebumps. Well, we started looking where we could see, a light, see if we could see anything, hoping maybe we'd see a track. Always seen tracks. Doodle bitty, little bitty old tracks. Looked at it's like a human foot, but it was real tiny. That person couldn't bend over maybe yay tall. They were just all over the place like mice tracks. Well, we explored quite a little while in there, and finally it got too damn cold. I couldn't take it no more. Like, I'm going back in the water and going back out where it's halfway cool. It ain't cold. I don't like the cold. So I jumped back in the water, went under that little rock wall there, popped out on the other side. So I paddled onto the shore and went up there and sat on that sandy beach, enjoying the warmth. I mean, it was shady there because it was always shady there, but it wasn't cold like in there. I was in there out there sucking that warm air up, watching the goosebumps leave. Here come the two brothers. They come out and paddled across to where I was at and climbed out. Oh, we was still sitting there trying to figure out these little tracks. Well, we was told not to tell nobody about this place. A lot of the old timers, the ones that were still living, knew about this place. And after the incident with the boy that went back there at night and disappeared, nobody after that went swimming or going in that cave. Because there was times when you could, it was a big enough opening that when the sand pulled back, you could drive right in there. Well, they just didn't talk about it no more because they didn't understand it and couldn't figure it out. They don't know where this boy went. Well, we sat there and it was funny because where we were sitting, the sun was behind us. The bluff wall was across that water hole, that stream, straight in front of us. Well, next few times we're there, we got brave and climb up on the bluff and jump off into the water because it was like 30 foot deep there. That was the only place that was deep. Well, we kept going there, and it come the seventh year at the end of that year, and we was up there at the boys' house playing at the farm and talking about, man, mighty hot. Let's go fishing. Maybe tomorrow we'll go fishing, and when they quit by, we'll just go swimming like we always do. Well, his grandpa pulled in. And he said, "Boys, I'll let you know when it's safe to go back there. Right now, it's not safe to go back. It's about the time that boy disappeared. Stay away from there. I'm warning you. Okay. Well, eventually, after the 7 years passed, he come and told us that we could go back there. So we go back there, and he told us he'd let us know when we couldn't go back there. So every chance we got, we go back there. Fish for a while, swim for a while, explore the cave for a while. Well, this went on for quite a while, and like I said, it was just weird because one time we decided we watched him leave, go to town, him and his wife. And he's gonna be gone for several hours. He's gonna go pick up some tractor parts, just almost out of state. So we decided to go back there. The old man wasn't lying. It was hot that day, and we went back there. We got back there. There was no water. The sand that was the beach, somehow, it looked almost like somebody took and just pushed all the sand out into the water up against that bluff wall. And all you could see was just a thin line of the where you could peek into the cave. But shit, how in hell did that happen? I never really understood it. And still this day, I don't. The only thing I can figure is it either has to be a magical spot, a mystical spot, or some person or people's done that place wrong and pissed off a bunch of water fairies. And in which case, they could be the ones doing this. But they let it be open for a while. Then at a certain time, they magically move the sand back across where you can't get in there, no water running. I don't know. I never ever figured it out. But I know when later on, when I had kids, that old man had died. Some other people got it, and they never went back there. So I took my kids. We'd get in Wine's Branch there by the rock quarry, and we would walk that Wines Creek branch. We'd do some wading, and now here's the funny part. Out of all the years I ever went back there, never one time did I ever see a snake of any kind. None, not even a garter or a black snake, let alone a water moccasin. You just didn't see them. They wasn't there. Most every place else I went swimming and fishing, you'd always see some kind of a water snake or some kind of snake. That was the only place I'd ever been over the years that I had never seen a snake. Never encountered a snake, not even on the bank, which is unusual, especially for the Midwest. Well, I took my kids back there and I was telling them, I said, it's a good place, but you just got to be careful because it's deep. But it's a gradual drop in. And I said, I'll take a big long stick and mark, don't go past that mark. And I made sure I was going to be there with them. I mean, they was little kids, and they were down there wading around and trying to catch minnows with a little dip net. Funny as hell to watch, but they kept asking what that big black looking spot was out there against that bluff wall. And I said, well, that's where the cave is. I said, there's a cave there. And I said, You go underwater right there by that bluff wall, and you come up on the inside of that cave. And I said, it's cold as hell in there. You guys ain't big enough that I want to trust swimming you both under there with me. And I said, so now you know why I got these marked, and I don't want you to go any further than where these poles are. Well, we went back there several times, and my daughter told my mom. So she decided one day that she wanted to see if we was lying. Well, we took fishing poles. We parked down there at the little place there where you pull off the blacktop. We all rolled our pant legs up and had old tennis shoes on because you never know if somebody threw a bottle in or something like there off the blacktop. And so we just always wore shoes just to be on the safe side, nobody get their foot cut. We walk on down and come to a few places, we'd stop and the kids would play a little bit. Because along the Wines Branch, the only places that were kind of deep, I guess for them, to me it'd be about waist deep. Most time it barely ever cover your shoe. But we started getting back there, and here's another thing too that's funny about that place. It can be 98 degrees all along that branch. But when you get down to the magical spot, it's about 73, 74 degrees. Don't ask me why. I guess because that cave, maybe. But we walked and walked. Mom goes like, "When the hell we gonna get there?" I said, "It's just right up here around the corner." Well, we come around the corner, and she goes, "Is it me? Is it getting cooler?" I said, "That's that cave." Cave? You didn't say anything about no cave. I said, "It's under the water." I said, "You can see it when you stand there on the shore. Watch, I'll show you." So we walked over there, and she goes, "Oh, I see now that kind of a black spot there." I said, "Yeah, that's the opening of that big cave." I said, "It's fucking huge." Well, we started throwing a fishing line in and knocking the hell out of them big old catfish. I mean, just one right after another. Your cork hit the water and just sink. Well, we fished quite a while, and then all of a sudden the fish quit biting. So the kids decided they wanted to do some more wading. Well, they were doing some wading, and I was in the water with them. Make sure they didn't go into that deep spot. And my mom was sitting there on the shore, would put her feet in the water. She goes, "Hope there ain't no snakes." I said, "I ain't never seen a snake. All the times I've ever been here, I've never seen a snake." She goes, "That damn water's cold." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Up on top, there's a hole where you can look down inside that cave." I said, "But I won't have you walk up there." I said, "I'm just telling you about it." Well, we was sitting there, and every so often you'd see something just at the corner of your eye. It's almost like a butterfly looking thing, but you just caught glimpses of it. That water down there, it looked like it had diamonds on top of the water. I mean, it just sparkled and shimmered. It was a really pretty place. Birds, you'd hear them a singing. Well, I told her, I said, "We have to be leaving in about an hour." So I said, "It's just a warning that you don't want to be back here at nighttime." She goes, "Well, hell yeah, you get lost." I just kind of played along, like, "Yeah, but that wasn't the reason." I knew it was getting around that time that that sand was going to shift. And I didn't want my mom and my kids something happened to them, so I wanted to get out of there before dark, just so everybody stayed safe. So we packed everything up and got the fishing pole and the fish and headed back up Wines Branch, headed back toward the rock quarry. And we got to the vehicle, and everybody walked up by the vehicle, and I grabbed a couple towels and paddled ourselves dry as best we could and went home. Mungles, I never knowed you to be scared of anything. So what was your real reason? So I told her the story. Oh, she said, that old man just pulling your leg. That's really. I said, over the years, I talked to several of them old timers, not together, but apart. And I said, every one of them told the same story. She still thought I was full of shit. So time went by. Next year, the kids a little bit older, so they wanted to go back there again. They had a lot of fun. So we loaded up in the vehicle, me and mom and my two kids. We went up and parked in the same spot, followed that creek. When we made the bend, the sand was all the way over to the bluff. She goes, this ain't that spot. It sure looks like it, though. It's the same kind. It looks like the same bluff. I said, it is. Now do you believe me? I said, come here. We walked on the sand all the way to the bluff. And again, there was a seam that you could look down into that cave. Well, she got her face down there and put her hand down there and she goes, my God. She said, it is a lot cooler and there's cool air coming out of there. I said, yeah, there's a hole in the top pushing that cold air out. She goes, this just don't make no sense. I said, I'll tell you what, just to prove to you, this is the spot. And I took my pocket knife out. I said, you see this little tree? I'm going to shave some of the bark off, carve my initials in there. We'll come back next month. She said, well, this is kind of a disappointment because I was going to take pictures of the kids playing in the water and catching some fish. I said, well, remember what I told you. So we played in the stream, winding the branch all the way back because there was water every place else except for there. So we went ahead and waited and played on the way back. Well, the following month, we went back. The sand is pulled back. There's deep hole of water there, and you can see the cave. And she goes, you took me to the wrong place. I said, remember that tree I carved my initials on? Right there behind you. She turned around and walked over that little small tree, and she couldn't believe it. Now, she never would admit that there was something mystical about that place, but she couldn't figure it out either because there was my initials carved on that tree where I'd peeled a little bit of bark. Well, over the years, I think me and those kids I went to school with are about the only ones that remember it because a lot of the old timers, like Stella, was a lady that knew about it. She used to go there as a little girl. And there was several of the other old people. Of course, they're all passed on now. Well, they never did tell their kids about it, and they didn't tell their grandkids about it or their great grandkids. So the only ones left that knows about this place is me, my two kids, They can't remember how to get there, but they do remember being there. My mom and those boys I went to school with. We never ever took anybody back there when I was going back there with those boys. It was always just us. And we never told nobody the exact spot. But when you go to my post and look on my channel, there will be a Google Earth picture of this place. And I'll put two photos up. One's got the area circled, that water hose circled. They're from the earth, and I got as close as I could get so it wouldn't be distorted. But you can kind of see what this place looked like. It was a real beautiful place. There was all these different ferns and stuff that grew all over on that bluff. It's kind of like where they're cracked where you'd see a big fern hanging there. Just, I mean, it was a beautiful place. Never seen no bugs there. Never seen no snakes, no bees. It was just a beautiful place. Was there ever rituals done in the cave? Be honest with you, you're so. I don't really remember hearing anybody ever talking about doing rituals there. Now, I ain't saying that maybe the Native Americans, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how long that place had been there. But that's a good question because I don't know. There could have been people sneaking in from the other way, maybe doing stuff there. I don't know. But all I know was it was and still is a magical place, and it still does the same thing it's always done. There's times when you go there that there's water, and you can go in that water about 4 inches deep and go right under that bluff wall, and you're up inside of a cave. But then after 7 years has passed, it closes back up. And nobody that I know of, other than that boy that disappeared, nobody knows when it fills in. Does it fill in at night, 1, 2, 3 o'clock? Nobody knows. I don't even know that. All I know is it does happen. And I don't know. I never ever seen it. I have went there and witnessed it filled up with sand, and then I went there and it's got water. But it is a mystical power spot. Just one of those places like the Superstition Mountains. I, I really don't have an answer. I wish I did. I was just throwing it out there, talking about it tonight. Maybe you would have some sort of an answer. Maybe you know of a place like this, or anybody else. It's a weird place. It's a beautiful place, but there was a boy that did disappear there. That was never heard from. They never found any bones. It was just like when that place sealed up, it took him with them. You know. So was it the fairies? Maybe who knows? Maybe he just got tired of our world and went to theirs. If they're responsible, I don't know. I do know we've seen those little footprints, but this place, yeah, that's true. I just wish I knew more about what makes this place change in and out. And I like you, I would like to know if maybe people go there and practice some kind of magic, whether it be earth magic, black magic, who knows? It would be interesting to know. But I will put up pictures on my post, and you can go there and look at them after the show. I'll have my wife put up a couple photos to show you what this place looks like, and maybe by looking at it, maybe you can get some sort of an idea. I don't. It's just something that was part of my life that I remembered, and I never figured it out. I thought maybe I'd throw it out there and see if anybody else knows of a magical spot like that. Maybe it would jar somebody's memory. That maybe because I know it just can't be just that one spot. It's got to be all over the world and all over the United States. Places like these pop up because they're like mushrooms. They're never ever just one mushroom. They're all over the place. So it was just one of those stories that was a true story. It could be. I sometimes wondered about that too because, like I said, we did find the little footprints in there inside the cave, but you know, like I said, you would see things while you was fishing just at the corner of your eye. But it wasn't like at the cemetery place when I was a kid. That place there, the fairies actually come up and interacted with me. But here at this spot, they never did really ever interact. I mean, they cut something come close where you could see it, like it was flying or floating. But every time you'd stop and turn to look, you wouldn't see it; it'd be gone. And like I said, I never noticed any kind of flies or bugs at all. Not even ants were there. It was like the perfect place, kind of almost like the Garden of Eden. Outside of it, outside of that area, there was weeds, but not in that area where I was at. Like I said, I'll put up photos. I'll put up one photo and it'll have a round circle around the water hole. And where the white line is, that's where the bluff is. And then in the next photo, it'd be the same photo, but I won't have nothing marked. That way you can see it better and maybe see if you notice anything. Maybe there's something you can pick up there by looking at it and hit me up with some sort of an idea. I have no clue. All I know is it's a fascinating place, and I used to enjoy going down there and fishing and swimming. But every couple of years, the sand goes across and seals that up, and there's just like a sliver of the cave that you can look into. It's I've never come across a place like this before, and I know there's got to be more places. It can't be just one spot on the earth. So I thought maybe somebody might know of a place like this. There was another place down where my uncle owned a farm, and I can't remember the name of the little creek that runs through there at the end of his property, but there had to been some kind of an Indian camp because there was big, like what they call shelf rocks, and the water would go over it like a waterfall. And in those rocks embedded was arrowheads, those round, it was some kind of a fish or a bug, and they were round and they looked like Indian beads. They had looked like holes through them, but they were actually embedded in those flat rocks. And I used to always ask my uncle if I could go down there with a chisel and a hammer and pop one of them rocks loose, because I mean there was arrowheads embedded in these rocks. And right at the end of that waterfall, we used to catch a lot of catfish. But we was down there one night, one Halloween night. The family all got together, and there was a hayride, and my uncle took count before we left, and then he took count when we got down there. And there was like 50 something of us relatives there that night at the weenie roast down there by the flat rock. And my uncle made that, he took head count, so he made sure there was plenty of food. Well, we got down there and he did a second head count, there was 82 people there. But when he went to do a third count, it went back down, and nobody had left, and nobody could remember who those other people were. It was personally, I think they were ghosts, but I don't know. I know there were some photos taken. I don't have them. My cousin has them now. I'll see if I can get some of them. But he took photos, and there's people that appears like in the background that you can see through. And that's the reason I believe they were maybe ghosts of the natives that lived down in that area. But that place still exists too, and it's another magical place. If you take like a Geiger counter down there, that thing go crazy. If you take a compass, that thing and you sit on top of them flat rocks where their arrowheads are, that compass will just sit there and just spin. Your cell phones won't work there. It and sometimes you take pictures. If you stand on the rock, take pictures, everything's blurry. But if you back off of them rocks out into the pasture and take pictures, they're crystal clear except for where those rocks are. So it's another mystery power spot. I know there was times when me and my uncle would go down there by ourselves, just me and him together and fish, and you'd get almost like energized, like you'd ate 15 candy bars. You get kind of hyper. But the moment you stepped off the rocks and headed back, you went back to being normal. And my uncle said he never could figure it out, but it was a beautiful place too. So it was another mystical hot spot. And I used to always talk to him about taking a chisel down there. He's like, I better not catch you with a chisel down there. But those arrowheads were embedded. Now, I don't know how true it was, but my oldest cousin, which would be his son, the oldest one, which was a lot older than me, he claimed that he was riding horses one night back there with his girlfriend, and now she's his wife, but back then it was his girlfriend. And they went to cross right there on the way back from checking cows, and they claimed that they seen a big brush fire going on the hillside, and there was people standing around it. Well, he was going to go up there and run them off. When they got up there, there wasn't nobody there. Holy shit! That's that's so creepy. Maybe there was somebody that got, or some people got shot or something. It could be. Yeah, that's kind of weird. I know somewhere I have to look up another photo. I got a photo, and it shows these horses standing in this pasture. But when you look, you see these other horses, but you can see through them. So there's lots of weird things that goes on in this world, and our world ain't what they tell us it is. But I know there's a place too in Georgia that I went to, and I went and stayed at this cabin. And the people that owned the cabin told me, he said, be careful when you walk around. We got bears. So they said we'd prefer that you just stay like in the main part of the yard and don't go up the mountain. But if you do, just be careful. And there was a place up there, and there was like a little spring, creek, whatever you want to call it, a stream deal. And it was like a feeling of static electricity there, you know, kind of like a charge in the air. And when I asked about it, they didn't want to talk about it. But I talked to a couple of locals down there, and they said, "Oh yeah." Anytime we get feeling down or drained, we walk along that little stream and it re-energizes you. I said, yeah, that's what I felt, but what? And they didn't know really anything about it other than people have been going there for years to, I guess, get a charge, a pick me up, kind of like drinking 5 or 6 cup of coffee. I don't know. I don't drink coffee, but okay, cool. I'd like to see those. That'd be neat. I won't show them to nobody else. I'll just look at them myself. But yeah, that sounds cool. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see it. That'd be pretty neat. But yeah, there's lots of these mystical places, and I really don't have an answer for them. All I know is these places do exist, and it's just one of those things that there's places like this, and they're all over the place. I just happen to find two places like this that mystical things happen there. I can't explain it. I wish I did have an answer, but I don't. It has to be like you said, where the veil's thin and things just happen there. I know there's another sand point that used to be north of where I used to live at when I was a kid, and they went down there with a drilling company, and they was going to drill a deep well. And as far down as they went, when they come up with these samples, it was nothing but pure sand. But I don't know where that come from either, because all around that field is nothing but clay. But then in the field I was talking about the other night, the same way. There's just one area that has sand, and it's just quite a long way down. It's nothing but pure sand. But right outside of it, nothing but clay, and you see things there. So it makes me kind of wonder if those ain't like you said, some kind of like portal areas. But I don't know. All I know is you around these mystical spots, you do see some weird things that defies what we've been told. I know my dad used to go down there not far from the house and to that one sand point, and every time it rained, he'd go there the next day and find arrowheads. Well, about 6, 7 years before they found out he had cancer, one day he was down there and he stayed down there a little bit too long, and the pole light was starting to come on. And he come home and he was a real dark complected. I mean, about the color of my sweater. And he come back, he was snow white. He didn't talk. He just sat there on the picnic table and drank beer. Mom kept asking him what happened. He wouldn't say nothing. So I think he seen the same thing I did down there was these Indians on these paint horses. But after that, he never went back there again. He simply refused. I'd ask him, "Hey, it rained last night. You want to find some arrowheads?" Nope. He wasn't going to go. Some people like that, they clam up. Yeah, I've been reading a little bit about that Tartarian deal, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but I'm still reading about it. But it sounds pretty interesting. I'm wondering if what you're saying, the ley lines, has something to do with these. Maybe they're what's connecting all these different spots. I don't know. I wish I had an answer though. Then again, I guess if we knew everything in the world, it'd be a pretty damn boring place after you know everything. I like I like them though because they're mysteries. They're things that I'm still trying to figure out. But I do know there is in those power spots. There is a lot of magical in the air there. Wow, cool. So it's like hidden technology then. What I'm assuming you're trying to say. It's been erased. Sounds cool. I'm gonna have to do some more reading into that because kind of fascinated with that. Then again, too, I'm also fascinated with Atlantis and that kind of stuff too. Anything that's abnormal, because if it ain't normal, and it ain't paranormal, then it's abnormal. That's the way I look at it. I agree with you there. I tell people that all the time that what our true history ain't what they've been teaching us, what they've been force feeding us. They just want to basically box us in and keep us like mushrooms. They want to feed us shit and keep us in the dark. That's what it really is. Because if everybody figured out where we really come from, what we really are, they wouldn't stand a chance on keeping us under control. How they can't even keep us under control now. There's people's finally starting to wake up and see that there's more to our world than what we've been told, you know. And finally, not just me, but there's other people that's come out and telling their stories about different projects and things they've seen. Yeah, I've seen that too, where the giants that you're talking about walked amongst people up until the early 1800s. I've been kind of looking at some of that too. I do know for a fact that there has been giant skulls found in the United States, and they was people that found them got in trouble, and the Smithsonian ended up with them, and then somewhere between where they was found and getting to the Smithsonian, they kind of poof disappeared. Wink, wink, if you know what I mean. They made them disappear because they wanted to. They didn't want to rewrite history because it wouldn't follow the Bible. So they decided that hide them or destroy them. Probably there's an old man that I know. He had a cave down on him, and he never let nobody rabbit hunt, squirrel hunt, blackberry hunt, or anything up there on that one hill. And they're in a they're keeping them in the Smithsonian basement. It don't surprise me. But he had a cave, and inside of it there was an Indian skeleton in there that had been there for eons. And one day I was up there hunting, and I got turned around, got lost. Well, started storming, and I end up finding that cave, and it ain't no joke. There was an old full skeleton. I mean, the full thing. And I went in there for shelter, Well, after the storm quit, he was out searching for me, and I fell asleep in there. And he made me promise I'd never ever disclose that because he said that Indian had been there for a long time, and that's where he chose to his final resting place. And he wasn't haunting him, so he figured leave him be. And to my knowledge, that thing is still there, that old skeleton. But I don't know how it is where you're at, but I know in and around the areas where I live, if they find out you got an Indian burial ground, they can come in and take your property, seize it for a period of time, and dig up the whole frickin' property, and then leave you the fucking mess to clean up. I think that's a bunch of shit. It wouldn't be smart for them to try it here because, sorry, but I don't keep no white flags, which means I ain't surrendering for shit. So, like I said, anyway, about those power spots, they do have a vibe of their own. It's not like any place else I've ever seen. They do have a vibe, a different frequency flow, and you can see and feel a lot of things there that just out of the ordinary. But there's another place too up by where my grandpa used to live. God damn. That fucker ought to be hung up by his fucking toes and then shot for doing that kind of shit because they were people too, just like me and you and anybody else. But you know how it goes. If that was me and you doing that, they'd throw us in a prison so far away we'd never find a key, let alone the opening. But people with money got a little pull somewhere. They can do whatever they damn well please. And it's a shame, though, that they're doing that because how in the hell would they feel if somebody cracked open their space where they're sleeping eternally and do the same thing to them? They wouldn't like it. If it's me, I'd haunt the shit out of them. But I like you were just talking about that Spillman guy. There was another guy I knew that was building condominiums, and he found Native American bones. And instead of him saying something, he put them in the back of a big 2-ton truck, drove down to the bottom of the hill, across the road, and dumped them fuckers right in the river. Okay, that explains it then. He's got money and pull. Rest of us poor bastards, we just gotta try to make do with what we got and be thankful we have for what we got. People like that, they don't nothing means nothing to them. If it ain't money or making them money, they don't care. But myself, there ain't no way I would dig in an Indian burial ground or even a regular cemetery. I don't care if somebody told me there was $1 million in cash or gold coins. I still wouldn't. I just don't believe in it. I believe somebody's resting, leave them be. That's their rest spot. They paid for it. They earned it. Leave them alone. But some people don't think like that. It's all about money and how much more money they can get on top of the money they already have. I never was like that. Yeah, there's crooked shit like that goes on around here too. And just all over the world. There's the ones that get by with shit, and then the others get the book slammed at them. Same way it's like DUIs and all that shit. There's certain people go into a courthouse and they donate some money to a courthouse, and the fucking court lets them slide through the cracks. And then the poor soul that goes out there one time get drunk and hit somebody or hit a light pole, they throw them poor fuckers in prison. Our system is crooked as shit, and and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon. It just keeps getting worse by the year. But the way it's looking, we ain't got to worry about it much longer anyway, because they're building all these damn encampments and all this shit. That's where they're going to try to run all of us to, or put us all in there. I'm going to die a free man because I ain't going to no damn camp. The only way I'm leaving this place is in a pine box. Period. I don't ask the government for shit, and I let them push far enough. And when it comes to that, where they're going to take us all to a camp, there'll be a few bullets fired on that one because I ain't going. I didn't take the COVID shot. I only take so much shit, and then I'll draw a line in the sand. I ain't crossing it. But yeah, there's people gets by with destroying stuff. Just like the reason why I never really told anybody about where this place is and the other mystical spots is because they do the same thing like you're talking. They go in there and mess it all up, destroy it, and build fucking condominiums and God knows what, maybe a fucking golf course. And that's another thing too. These people playing golf, who in the fuck in their right mind would want to go to a goddamn cow pasture where there ain't no fucking cows, there ain't no cow shit, and chase a fucking ball that they keep hitting further and further and further? Never did understand the game of golf and the dumb motherfuckers that plays it. Personally, I think they're fucking retarded if you ask me, because you think I'm gonna hit a fucking ball and then have to go chase that motherfucker and hit it further and just keep following that ball? Well, fuck you, been 20 counties. Fucking crazy. And them dumb motherfuckers out there that pay all that money to belong to a fucking golf membership, them are some retarded sons of bitches. And you look at most of them, they're judges, lawyers, doctors. 99.9% of them pricks are retirees. Here's another thing, too, that pisses me off royally. You take the poor man that works in a coal mine all of his life, got black lung, hacking up a 5 or 6 lungs a day. He goes to retire, and what's he get? $5 an hour is what they're going to pay him as being retired. Then you got a motherfucker out there that sleeps in a goddamn trailer truck all day long, working for like JB Hunt or whatever, and that motherfucker collects $5,000 a month. That don't make no fucking sense. I have no fucking clue about this world. That's the reason I stay in my own little world where My world is mine and theirs is theirs. They can do whatever the hell they want to out there on their side. Just leave me the fuck alone. I've had enough bullshit. I figure I've done enough time in the projects that I cut me out a small piece. That's my world. I stay in my world. I don't go bother anybody. And I've had people go by here and take pictures of me, go by and take a fucking pop shot with a gun, which don't work out too good for them because I got guns of my own. But I have to deal with that on a daily basis. Just to go outside and do my feeding, I have to decide, do I want to roll the dice today and go out the front door, roll the dice and go out the back door? And then when you're out there trying to do the feeding or whatever, you got to constantly be watching for some ignorant fucker to take a pop shot at you or go by and try to take a picture of you. And it's like, really? Do you see me at your house aggravating you? Why you want to drive up and down the fucking road and stare at me, take a shot at me with a gun, and take a picture of me? Am I that fucking ugly? You ain't never seen nothing this ugly? Well, shit, go look in the mirror, man. I'm in my own little world. Leave me be. That's why I got a mean ass dog. I got security cameras and I got guns to keep these fuckers at bay. It's like what you said one time. When you're different, like we are, it's like they want to put open season on you. Well, as long as they know that I ain't no setting duck. This fucking setting duck will shoot back. But that's how it goes. Well, I'm gonna get off here and go have me a smoke. And Hero, thanks for stopping in and talking a little bit. Anytime, man, you wanna yap, just and you see me on live or comment on something I've said, feel free. If it's a question, I'll try to answer it. If it's something you just want to talk about, I'll you put the question out there and I'll try to answer it, or we can have a discussion about it. But I'm gonna get off here and go have me a smoke and have a good night, Euro. And to everybody else that might watch this later, have a good night. I'll talk to you later, Urso. Good night.